Meat City, baby.
Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another 1000 Gamerscore report, and today I'm talking about Cities Skylines Remastered. This is the first version of the game, not the sequel that's coming out for console, I think later this year, but it's a remaster of that old version of the game. And what it is, it's a city builder, like Sim City of old. You have an open plot of land that starts pretty much empty other than trees and water features and a highway connection in this game. And you start building it up from there to, populations of over hundreds of thousands of people, including all kinds of districts. And you got to take care of police and fire and education and all that kind of stuff. And you build up different categories: residential, commercial, and industry. It has a lot of overlap with the old SimCity games, if you're familiar with games going back that far. There are also scenarios in the game, kind of one-off, preset, pre-built cities with a problem that you need to solve in a certain amount of time. But 95% of the game is kind of that open sandbox mode, if you will, with no real story, just a little bit of early progression and tutorial, and then you're let loose on the world to do with it as you see fit. So the base game for City Skylines has 36 achievements to get that 1000 gamer score, and then there is a ton of DLC for this game. The most I've seen, I'm sure there's some that have more, but in terms of games that I'm familiar with, this is the most DLC I've seen. And it's a little confusing because there's a lot of content creator add-ons, which are just like songs to a soundtrack or a cosmetic appearance for the buildings that don't give you any additional gamer score. But there are maybe about a dozen paid DLCs that do add achievements. And there are 86 additional achievements from those various DLC for an additional 1,710 gamer score. So all in, 122 total achievements for 2,710 gamer score, which again, the highest number that I know or am familiar with in terms of an Xbox game for achievements under one single title. So the first question that you may ask then is, how long does it take to get those 122 achievements and all of that tasty gamer score? And I can't really answer it for you. I have no idea of a good range of values to give. And the reason why is going to be the main focus of this whole review. It's going to get really negative from here on out, which as a rule, I generally try not to do, but it cannot be helped in this situation. This game includes some of the absolute worst achievements I have ever seen in my entire life playing video games. They're awful. You can close the video now, walk away. This is one that you don't need to get involved with, don't participate in. It's terrible. But if you want the details, here they go. So the main issue that I have with the achievements in this game is their randomness, and randomness on top of randomness. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. But additionally, there is also the dreaded glitched achievement. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. So it's this compounding of terrible random achievements that you have no control over, and at least one achievement that is glitchy, buggy, but you're still able to get it. It's just a terrible combination that leads to a really unsatisfying pursuit of the completion of the game in terms of the achievements. Talking a little bit about the specifics of what's involved here to get all of these achievements. Well, as I said, it is an open sandbox city builder. So there is no online component, there is no PvP, there's no matchmaking. You don't have to worry about any of that. There's no missable achievements. One of the things that I will say is some of the DLC maps, some of them integrate really nicely. You could have played the base game to see if you like it, have a big city built up, download the DLC, and then all of those added components can just go right into your already built city and mesh with it very nicely. However, some of the achievements, I think one, maybe more, require a specific new map type that is only available in the DLC. You need this like winter version map that you only get with a DLC purchase. So if you play the base game and you really like it and you've got a good city up and running and you're like, oh, I'd like to get those new modules into my existing city, you're going to be blocked out from some of the achievements because they need to be on a new map that you only get with those DLC purchases. So that is frustrating, but at least there's no worry about player counts and finding matchmaking and all that kind of stuff. That is not an issue for this game. There are no missable achievements, as I said, because everything is kind of this single player playthrough. There's nothing that you have to worry about missing and going back for or replaying other than that map type. There is the one glitched achievement, which I think we'll talk about now. It's called Garbage Collection Issues, and it is a DLC achievement. So if you're just playing the base game and you're just going for that straight 1000 gamer score, you won't have to worry about this. The base game did not have any problems with glitchy achievements. They did have other problems, which we'll talk about. But this DLC, it's a small DLC. It has 3 achievements. It's called Plazas and Promenades, and it allows you to put in pedestrian areas to your city. Basically, everything is usually built around a grid of roads, and you have to have a road nearby for the buildings that you zone to develop. But now with this DLC, you can make it a pedestrian area, which has just pedestrian walkways and some other facilities that support those walkways. One of them is a garbage collection point, and how they work, I really struggle to tell you. Do they require your normal garbage trucks to come to them to pick up their trash and take it away? I think so, but I don't really know. The achievement requires that you have 5 of these garbage collection stations, and they have to be at their capacity limit. So they have to be full without getting their trash picked up or without having their trash level drop down. And I honestly can't tell you how that works. I did a bunch of research online, and some people talk about, well, if you put your collection stations at the end of a long winding road and you have a bunch of traffic and your garbage trucks get stuck in the traffic, that will let the stations kind of fill up over time. And I tried that, and it didn't really do much. I could get the collection amount to go up to a certain point to get to 40, 50, 60%, but never got close to 100. And even if that did work, what a weird, gross solution to a problem. Totally unintuitive, didn't make any sense. So again, I worked on this. I tried different scenarios. I tried delaying things. I tried putting in 100 stations. I tried putting them all in one area in a corner of the map. I tried putting them in center city. I tried spreading them out. I tried killing all of my other garbage trucks. I tried having 100 other garbage trucks. Tons and tons of stuff. Worked on it for an hour or two, and then randomly, for no reason, the achievement unlocked. Then I looked right away. I did not have 5 of these things at capacity, not even close. No one thing that I did. It just randomly unlocked after trying a bunch of nonsense. And that's slightly better than the achievement just being completely unlockable and glitched, but waving your hand and hoping eventually that it unlocks is just about as bad, almost as bad. So definitely one to stay away from and be aware of. Other than that, the pursuit of the achievements in this game, they're mostly pretty straightforward. It's just kind of build everything. As you progress through the game and your city grows, you unlock more buildings, you unlock more monuments, you unlock more special things, and eventually you have to kind of build everything. And some of the buildings, along with just growing your city, you have to meet certain thresholds. And some of them are fine, right? The goal of the game is to build your city and grow, so getting to a certain population makes sense. Getting a certain number of police stations makes sense. Having, a low pollution or a low crime rate makes sense. But some of the buildings require you to do bad things. Some of them require you to have a terrible crime rate, like really high crime for a really long time. Basically, you have to do things that trash your city to unlock a building to then continue pursuing in your main city. So you have to kind of save and do this branch off or build this sacrificial city that you blow up and do the bad stuff to unlock the building. And then thankfully the building, whether you unlock it in another save game or not, whichever zone or city you build, if you meet the condition, the building is unlocked on your account. So that's good. They at least got that right. When it comes to the DLC achievements, the main focus is on reaching the highest level of each of the focuses of those DLC packages. So there's an education one or university one where you build different college campuses, and there's 3 different types, and each one has kind of an end track building So you need to work through these 3 different campuses and build them up and get students to go and attend. And then at the end, you reach that kind of pinnacle. There's one for a specialized industry, and you need to have a certain profitability rate in those different industries to get them to 5 stars to get all of the achievements for those various DLC. They're mostly pretty good with some oddball exceptions. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road. The hardest achievements in the game. The base game hardest achievement, I'm going to say, is I Want It All, and that's to unlock all of the buildings. And as I said a little bit earlier, it's not so much hard, it's unintuitive. It does take a really long time. You need to not just run your city well and eventually you'll unlock everything. That is not how it works. That will unlock some of the stuff, but then you also need to do all these other little sidetracks and tangents, including some terrible city management, crashing and burning some cities, just completely going off the rails for these things that you won't be able to come back to. So you'll have to save and then branch off to do the bad stuff, or again, start a new city that will just be your sacrificial lamb that you'll run into the ground, meet the terrible condition, and then have the building unlocked for your main playthrough. For the DLC, the hardest achievement I'm gonna say is Totally in Motion. This requires you to complete the 3 mass transit scenarios. And scenarios are interesting because some of them, I think there's some in the base game, and then these in the traffic DLC expansion, they for the first time put a time restriction on completing an objective. So the sandbox base game, it's slow and steady. You can take your time. You can expand however you want. You can solve crime when you want. You can put out fires when you want, right? There's no immediacy or urgency. These mass transit scenarios, at least one of them, and I think 2 or 3, have a requirement, a failure condition. If you need to get traffic, so you're given this city in one of them that has terrible traffic conditions. Like the average traffic rate throughout the city is 85% or something. Like most intersections are blocked up and bad, and there's no traffic flow, and it's very jammy and stagnant. And you need to get the traffic for the area on average down below whatever the number is, 60%, let's say. But you have to do it within a certain time frame before the date in the game reaches X. Like, I don't know if it's 20 years of game time or 30 years of game time. And if you cross that threshold, the run's over. You lost. So not only do you need to complete the objectives, but you need to do it quickly enough that you resolve the issue before the clock runs out. And so that's why it's the hardest, just because you have this clock on it when nothing else in the game ever really does. Just these specific traffic scenarios. So for me, that's the toughest achievement in the DLC. Most annoying achievement time. For the base game, it is absolutely 1001 nights. And what that requires is that you witness 1001 day-night cycles. As you play through the game, the date counter in the lower left corner will go. And it goes pretty fast. The calendar moves, I think it's every 5 seconds for a day if you have the speed set to its highest. So that's fine. That doesn't sound bad, but that's not what the game's talking about. In addition to the days ticking by, as you're kind of zoomed out and zoomed up and back and doing your thing, eventually the landscape changes from daytime to nighttime, but it doesn't sync with the actual days, right? That'd be really jarring and distracting if every 5 seconds it was daytime, nighttime, right? So it doesn't do that. The day-night is set on, I think it's a 3-minute timer, independent of the speed of the game and how fast your actual days are progressing in the game. It's this set stagnant thing. And what's worse is you can turn off the day-night cycle because, again, if you're trying to build and it's dark and you can't really see what you're doing, it makes sense. Just turn off day-night, always have it be daytime. It's a little easier to build and see what you're doing. If you do that, you void counting days for this achievement. So my entire first city, I had this turned off. I didn't realize this was a problem. And then I got to the end and I had 0 progress. After tens of hours in the game, I had no progress towards this achievement. And so then I had to go back and do it. And I built a whole second city doing all the DLC stuff, and I was still nowhere near it. I ran some math, back of the napkin kind of stuff here. You're looking at a minimum, I believe, 50 hours of playtime just letting the game sit for the day-night cycle to go through the 1,000 times that's required to unlock this achievement. And so you're going to be done everything else in the game long before this. And so then what do? Well, you may ask, why is all the B-roll footage just sitting with the camera zoomed out? That doesn't look like a city builder. That's the game. That's what you're going to spend most of your time doing, is just sitting with the camera zoomed out. Maybe you're just watching TV and you have to tap your controller every once in a while the days just cycle through, because that is an incredible amount of time just waiting for the clock to go, and there's nothing you can do to make it faster or easier. It is a terrible achievement that you can make worse not even knowing if you turn off this inconvenient feature, and then you just, if you leave it on, even if you leave it on, it's going to require way more than every other achievement in the game, just sitting there and waiting for the clock to run out. It's awful, but it's nowhere near as bad as the actual most annoying achievement in the game if you count the DLC, and the achievement is what the ... It's a weird name, and it's a weird achievement, and it's awful. What this requires is that you witness what do they call it? A special disaster, something like that. One of the DLCs unlocks disasters. Tornadoes can strike, a meteor can fall, an earthquake can happen. And that's kind of cool, because normally the city just kind of slowly progresses and you just build up slowly over time. This throws a big wrench in it, like, oh crap, a meteor came and blew up a district that I had all set up. Now I got to go through and work it again. It's kind of fun, kind of cool. But what you need to happen is you need to have the specific disaster be a tornado. And then when that happens, there's I believe, a 1 in 250 chance that the tornado is a special version of a tornado called a chirpinado, which will, instead of destroying your stuff, it'll upgrade it. So it's like this beneficial disaster. But it's random on top of random. I had disasters. So I built my first city, went through all that, and then did all the DLC stuff and built a whole second city. And before I did that, I turned disasters on in my old city and ran it for tens of hours and never got the achievement. So then I was like, oh, I'll just build a new city. I'll do all the DLC stuff and I'll leave disasters on the whole time, and maybe it'll happen while that's going on. It did not. I got all the way through, finished the game, finished every other single achievement, even got the 1001 nights after letting my console sit, and it still took tens and tens and tens of hours for this last achievement to unlock. So even if you set the disasters has a slider bar, you can choose 0% or 100% for disasters. I had that maxed the entire time, and I would still go sometimes 20 to 30 minutes without a disaster even occurring. I would have this on and then flip the TV over to watch a show and come back, and no disasters had happened in the span of a show, of a 30-minute show. And so you can't control when the disasters happen. There is a button to make a disaster happen, but it can't trigger the achievement, so they're useless. So you're waiting randomly for a disaster to happen, which can be 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes in between disasters. And then you need it to be the right type of disaster. It has to be a tornado, not a meteor, not an earthquake, not a tsunami. And then you have to have that tornado hit the special condition to be the chirpinado. It's awful. In my game, I checked the game. It starts on whatever your current date is. So if you start a new city, it starts as, July, whatever, 2024, your actual calendar date is. Kind of cool. So I started this earlier this year. It might have been late 2023, but we'll call it start of 2024. And my chirpinado unlocked in 2173. So it's 149 years that it took for me to unlock this. And running at the max speed, which I certainly wasn't the whole time, but let's assume that I was, running the game at the max speed, it takes 30 minutes for a year of the game to go by. So that was 75 hours of time to go from when I started to when I unlocked the chirpinado. And I was done with all the other achievements probably in 25, 30 hours in just this second city, right? So 75 hours for that on top of whatever I spent in my original city as well. Close to 100 hours of doing nothing other than waiting for something to happen, random on top of random. is the worst design I've seen for an achievement ever. You can't make it more efficient. You can't make it more likely to happen. When a disaster happens, your game slows down. So then you have to like be aware, oh, a disaster happened, go back into the game, fix the problem, and then crank the speed back up, and then start waiting all over again. It's terrible. Whoever came up with this achievement, don't come up with any more because you're doing it wrong. This is the worst achievement I have ever seen in any game, and it is 100% a reason to stay away from this game if you care about achievements. The game by itself, I did enjoy. It has some cool aspects. I had fun with it. But from an achievement standpoint, grading it as an achievement, this is a 1 out of 10. The only thing saving it from being a 0 is that there was no hard, glitched, unattainable achievement. That would have been a 0. There is that one weird garbage collection one, but it did unlock for me after fiddling with it for a little while. So it gets a 1 out of 10, but barely. Absolutely the worst achievements I've seen in any game in a very long time, if not ever. The worst achievement, the worst type of achievement. This is bad. Buyer beware. Stay away because it's not a good time. When I got done, of course, the 10 minutes that I spent not recording, waiting for the achievement thing to happen is when it happened. So I don't even have footage of the Chirpy-nado. I just got the aftermath of the report, seeing it, which I've included in there. And I wasn't even happy. I was just like, glad I could move on and be done with it. And so save yourself the hassle. Hopefully this video will let you at least know what you're getting into. If that's the kind of achievement that you like to pursue, good luck. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.